Good evening, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Bhakti Community. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today, Bhakti On, where we'll discuss Rule the Airwaves. What you hear every day quietly decides who you become. With our speaker, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. People are still dialing in, but really grateful to you, Vaish, for coming back for another episode of Bhakti On.
Thank you so much, JM. Such a gracious introduction. I'm deeply touched. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining in today because together, when we discuss the principles that carry us to higher ground, simply by hearing them and seeing others interested in them, we can make tangible progress. There's a favorite passage of mine from a teacher named Kunti. She was a queen, and she mentioned in her one of her soliloquies a phrase or a word, granati, which means to appreciate the service or practice of another. And by appreciating it, seeing others' enthusiasm for advancing in their spiritual practice, then one also gains an equal portion of that enthusiasm. Doesn't that sound like a good idea? It just shows you how powerful appreciation and gratitude is. Voltaire also said a similar thing. So when you appreciate the good qualities in others, they become yours. There's a way in which gratitude opens the heart and allows us to take in the good qualities of other people. I've been thinking today about the word individual, and I've been meaning to look it up, but I didn't have time because it's been a really eventful, busy day. But I'm going to do it right now, right in front of you. Individual. Here's what it means: single, separate, or of or for a particular person, characteristics of a particular person. And it comes from late Middle English in the sense of indivisible, from medieval Latin individualis, from Latin individus, from in, not, and dividus, which means divisible. It's very interesting because if you think of yourself as being in a unit, you're something. You're not nothing, you're something. And that something cannot be divided and it can't be reduced. It is always what it is. This is one of the main points in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna makes, is we're individuals. If you really think about that, individual, we can't be divided. So we're a complete unit, and actually we're part of a greater whole. We're part of the individual who's the source of everything. This is the philosophy of the ancient wisdom literatures. In fact, there's a verse in the beginning of the Sri Ishopanishad, one of my favorite books, and it starts with the syllable Om. Has anybody ever heard that syllable before? And then it goes on from there, Purnam Ada Purnamidam. Purnam means perfect. And what the verse is saying is that we're part of something perfect. And we emanate from that perfect source. And we're also individuals. Sometimes people wonder if I actually exist. This is a conundrum for philosophers since time immemorial. If you study epistemology, which means the science of trying to discern how we know what we know or if we know anything. And some people have opined that we don't really exist. which doesn't make sense because we can sense that we exist. But are we individuals? Some people also say we're individual now, but in the future, maybe we won't be individuals. Maybe we'll divide it, or maybe we will disintegrate. But the Bhagavad Gita makes very clear that what's disintegrating is just the frame that we have around us. I was at somebody's house today and I could see that their house was falling apart. I mean, all houses do. You get beat by weather, right? Over time, sun, weather. And I could see that although at one time it was a nice new house, now I could see dry rot and other parts of trim falling off. I mean, the house still looks decent, but I could see the writings on the wall, the dry rots in the wall. And there's a way in which these bodies, too, over time, they diminish. But we as individuals are always whole. We're never divided. We're never extinguished. We can't be cut. If someone was to drop an explosive on us, let's say of the magnitude of the biggest nuclear bomb there was, we would still be perfectly fine. So there's no case under which we're divided or diminished or extinguished, any of the issues. And so as individuals, we also have um, free will. That's why we get excited about being creative. We have an individual nature. Bhakti, the practice of bhakti, it's kind of yoga, is meant to remove the superfluous part of our existence. We have a core which is always there and it is complete and in and of itself. But the external features of our lives, for instance, this body, if somebody asks me how old I am and I say, well, I'm 69, I'll be 70 this year in September. That's incorrect. As far as me, the actual entity, the individual, it's just the body, which has its um, changing nature. So coming to the process of bhakti yoga, it's really meant to for us to discover what's already there, who we already are, to remove the mask, take away the coverings. This is called in Sanskrit anavriti. Everyone say anavriti. Did you say it? I can't tell. Okay,
Anavriti.
thank you. In one translation, it means to uncover yourself, take away the covering. Now, here comes the part that relates to today's class, although hopefully everything does. Shabdat. Shabdat means sound. The fulcrum of all power in the practice of yoga, specifically bhakti yoga, our topic today, because the show's called Bhakti On, is that by sound vibration, we become clear, purified, uncovered, and our real nature can shine forth. How? By the power of sound. Anavriti Shabdat. By sound, we can become covered. By a sound, a different kind of sound, we can become uncovered and understand our nature. That was my preamble to the show today. So before I go into other stuff, how is everybody? Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best you've ever been in your life, 1 being you'd like to go back to bed and not come out for a while. 10, Ishvari Radha gives a 10. Denise is a 10 happy. That's good. Kana has a 10, as in the Kana Upanishad. Good to see you, Kana, by the way. Thanks for joining. Yasmin gives 8.75, still very high score. Sherelle. Sherelle's coming in. Uh-oh, now they're coming fast. Sherelle, where'd she go? Eight body, mind, 10, soul, and spirit. Eight body, mind, 10, soul, spirit. Good answer. Phil is five, been struggling a bit lately. I can relate. Phil, I'm glad you came to the show too, so we can talk more about it. Then we got Premanisha, five, crazy busy work today. I can relate to that too. Let's see. Anika, seven. Nice. Phil, but okay. Way to go, Phil. Rallied within a few seconds. 10. Tataga, 10. Abhinash, 9. That's high. Ankit, 10. We're going to find out what you've been doing, Ankit. And Neha, 10. Okay. Well, going through the Bhagavad Gita and finding principles that we can use. That's
Chuck
what
just came in.
we're about. Hey, what'd Chuck say? 8 before the session started 10. Oh, come on, Chuck. That's too nice. Now you pushed me up. I was about a 8.7, but now you pushed me up at a 10. But that's just how you roll. Okay. Great, everybody. Well, it's interesting that we can even be aware of how we are or notice our own level of consciousness. And then the next question is, can we engineer our consciousness? Can, can we, from any situation, no matter what the environment or what the circumstances, similar, can we adjust our consciousness upwards? Well, there's a resounding yes that comes from not just the Bhagavad Gita, but for any progressive person who has noticed that he or she can adjust their consciousness by being observant of themselves, and the changing circumstances around them, and to be situated in the self. Actually, that's from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna advises us to not be overcome by the ephemeral nature of this world. Ephemeral means constantly changing. And there's a core deep inside us that's always steady and Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means the realization that we always exist, that we're always an individual, that we can never be vanquished. I mean, imagine if somebody gave you for your birthday a flashlight. You didn't have to charge it ever. Lee J, what if we gave you for your birthday a back? You got a flat. We give you a flashlight, and you can't find any batteries in it, and we say you never have to have batteries. It'll work forever with no charging.
I will
Would
be
you
very
consider it
disappointed.
valuable?
No, and I will be very disappointed.
Why? Because if it lasts forever,
Oh,
I'm
without
saying you give you
battery?
a flashlight. It doesn't have any batteries, but it'll work without batteries, without charging, and it goes forever. What do you think
That
of
will be great.
that? And that's what Krishna says we are. I mean, I've been thinking about that lately. Sometimes I'm walking along and I'm thinking, yeah, what if I had a flashlight? It always worked and you never have to charge it. And I thought, that's what the self is. That's what the Atma is. The Atma is always on. It's always shining, always exists. But then when we get into the Bhagavad Gita more, we find out we're individuals. It's not an amorphous experience. We have our own natures. And what's more, from getting to the bhakti realm, the individual has characteristics. The spiritual individual, one of them is affection. We naturally have affection and we want to express it. It's the core nature of the self to express love, to attach him or herself to another out of gratitude, love. That's the nature. And when that gratitude overflows, then there's activity in gratitude, which is called bhakti. For instance, if you're around somebody that's so wonderful that you start feeling gratitude in your heart for that person. Has that ever happened to you? You're around somebody, you just think, this person is so nice and amazing. And then in your heart, there's gratitude, and you think, what can I do to reciprocate? Can I give something? Can I offer some service? Something like that. This is the awakening of bhakti, because bhakti is not static, it's active. So the individual, which has a loving nature, always, it's the nature. We're looking for love. But then when we connect with a person, we want to do something. So when we do something out of gratitude, it's called service, it's called das. You might notice that, some of those who have taken up the practice of bhakti, they they're called das. So it's a very exalted title. It means someone who's gone from the level of observation into gratitude, and then they take a name das. Women are called dasi because it means now I want to act on this and do service to give back to my most amazing source. So that's the beginning of bhakti. And now the other question comes up a lot is how do I get to that level of consciousness? And there's an answer, and that's what today's presentation is about. But before I go there, I'd like to know if anybody had an interesting weekend. Chuck, your life's always interesting because you approach it in a curious way. I wonder if you had anything interesting happen this weekend.
Lee J and I biked 70 miles to the ocean and back on Sunday, so that was interesting.
Okay, I'm going to give him an appropriate emoji. What did it feel like when you got to the ocean?
Oh gosh, it's hard to describe the feeling in words. Lee J?
I think at first it's you feel this exhaustion and you feel like you cannot make it, but after a certain point, you don't feel anything and you just keep doing it.
And did you come over a hill or reach a perspective of which you could see the ocean on the bike ride?
We did. Yeah, there were two big climbs. And so I'm sure there's a good metaphor worth mining in the process of determination to get up to the top and then see the amazing view and then and
Well, near me, there's the Skyline Boulevard. And
yep.
I have a friend that lives over in that section, across over the hills. And I always feel this sense of, and I agree, it's ineffable. It's hard to describe, but when you get to the top of the Skyline Boulevard and look down, you can see the ocean. And I just feel happy suddenly just to see the ocean, and it puts things in perspective for me. And it's amazing how just by observing that body of water, that there's so many there's a natural stimulation of our sense of grandeur, maybe is a word, and of groundedness. I've read in the Bhagavatam that when you observe the horizon, that it helps to ground you. Was it the Pacific Ocean?
It was the Pacific Ocean. It's a very Sattvic kind of feeling of perspective, I guess you could say.
Yeah, can you say more about that, the sattvic aspect of it?
There's a sense of satisfaction, there's a sense of peace, there's a sense of wow, there's something much bigger than me.
Hmm. That's a nice description of sattva. We've talked about the gunas, the modalities of this world. It creates a lens through which we see the world. And when we're in sattva, those we might experience this kind of wonder, happiness, peace, appreciation. When we're in rajas, what do you think it would be like, Chuck?
Too much is never enough.
God, yeah, what a nice description. If there's a way in which I want something, I crave something, even as I get it, I can't absorb it. Tolstoy told a story about this. There was a landowner who had so much land he could afford to give it away. So he offered as much land as a person could traverse in one day or circumambulate. Well, that's not exactly the right word because that means to go all the way around. But in any case, the runner would start off and run, and as much land as the person could demarcate by running from that one spot and then coming back to the finish, which was a prerequisite. You had to finish before it would be granted to you. So the person started running and then thought, I need more, I need more, I need more, and kept making the circle wider. And then they got to a point where they realized they had to make it back. And well, I'll just tell you the end of the story. The person ran himself to death and he didn't get back to the end. If I am hearing you correctly about too much is not enough, it's somewhere in that realm, Rajesh, right? Anything on tamas? That's the lowest of all modes for anybody who hasn't heard this before. What would you say, Chuck?
Just ignorance, wanna do nothing, sleep,
Yeah.
not even knowing what's good for us.
Mm. Wow.
Everything's too much.
Everything's too
The
much.
other end.
Yeah. It's something we can note that even as we consider it, these states that Chuck is describing, there's ways in which we've probably all experienced these. Maybe we do it in a 24-hour period, going through various states of consciousness. This is the filter through which we see the world, these three modalities. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about how they mix together. They're combinations and permutations of these. So something you don't get pure sattva, you get sattva mixed with rajas, maybe a little bit of tamas. Some people have a lot of tamas, maybe a tad of sattva. Combinations, permutations. Well, in bhakti, there's a way that the greatest teacher of bhakti, named Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, said that our mind is like a mirror. And if the mirror is covered, you have to cleanse it so that you can see reality. And then he told the process, and it's through shabda, sound vibration, through what we call transcendental sound vibration. It's sound that's not touched by any of these three modalities. It purifies the instrument of the mind, or as this teacher said, the mirror of the mind. So we can not only see ourself, we can see our real self-interest. And at that point, our free will becomes extremely noticeable. I don't like that phrase exactly, but extremely noticeable. But we awaken to our real self-interest at that point. So bhakti is something we can experience directly for ourselves. First of all, that we are individuals. That's an awakening of sattva, where we're aware of the self, of our own selves. And then as we experience more advancement, we can notice that there's a self of ourself. In other words, we're being sheltered, maintained by a higher consciousness that's always with us. Someone I heard, I was in another neighborhood and someone was playing a song. The refrain was, "You're never alone, you're never alone." And so that's true. That's literal. Literally what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Wow. Anybody else have an interesting weekend? Chuck and Lee J pedaled 70 miles to see the ocean. Anything interesting?
I had an interesting weekend. I got up early, went to the beach, ran about 2 miles, just came over a knee injury, watched the sunrise, and did a yoga on the beach.
That
That
definitely qualifies. And what was it like seeing the sunrise?
It's just, I've seen it many times, but every time it's different. It's just an astonishing sight. You just feel it, with the wind coming off the ocean, you just feel like you're breathing more efficiently, especially when there's not many people there. It's just, it's like your own little sanctuary.
Sanctuary. I'm going to look that up. I love that word. Hold on. Let me look it up. Sanctuary. A place of refuge or safety, a nature reserve, a holy place, a temple or church. Comes from sanctuare from Latin. And early use in reference to a church or other sacred place where a fugitive was immune by the law of the medieval church from arrest to give rise to sanctuary. That's interesting history. You go to a place and it's like an embassy almost. You go there and nobody can touch you, none of the laws of the world. That's kind of what an ashrama is. Ashrama in Sanskrit, you've heard the word ashram? Ashram, well, generally means a place where people are serious about practice. It's organized for spiritual practice. And shrama means getting worn down by useless work, doing things that don't help you, don't ultimately lead to your spiritual advancement. And ashrama means a place where there's none of that. Sanctuary, similar. I noticed also, I was in the forest over last week. I was in the forest in Muir Woods, and there's a section there called the Cathedral. There are very tall redwood trees, but John Muir, who helped to bring about a lot of conservation movement, had talked about how he found sanctuary in nature, and it kind of resonates with what you're saying about the sun coming up, seeing the ocean, and so forth. This is one of the teachings in the Bhagavad Gita, is to learn to see these natural phenomena as supernatural and to recognize. For instance, Cana, isn't it? It's like the greatest show on earth, the sun coming up.
Yeah.
The fact you mentioned that you're alone means most people miss it. Either they sleep through it, or they're on their way somewhere where they're just trying to get to work. They want the sun out of their eyes so they can see the road and so forth, but you're there taking advantage. Yeah, I love getting up to see the sun. It's also edifying for health to get the early sun on your face, right in your eyes. It stimulates a lot of the hormones in your body. We're tied into that natural system. One more. Who had an interesting weekend?
I had a moment of recognition. My daughter's been away and she came back on Saturday and she missed her train and she was going to have to wait an hour and a half. So we decided to meet her halfway on the train. And I wanted to get her some flowers that day to greet her when she got home. And I was at the markets and I saw someone with flowers. I'm like, oh, cool, they've got flowers here. I'll get some on the way out. Anyway, I forgot. And it got to the end of the day and I was like, oh, I'm not going to have flowers when I pick her up. Oh, well, it's okay. I'm going to be there. I'm present. I'm picking her up. It's enough. And then on the way to the train station, like 5 minutes before this train station that I'd never been to, there was a random shelter set up selling fresh flowers. I'm like, thank you, Krishna. Yeah, it's just, like whatever, yeah, Krishna wants us to have, we will have. So it was beautiful to be able to greet her with this beautiful bunch of flowers. I was so grateful.
Serendipity. What do you think of that word for this? The occurrence and development
Synchronicity.
of events
There,
by
yeah,
chance and a
serendipity.
happy event. Serendipity, synchronicity. I think that in discovering how everything's interconnected, we're in a cosmos. That means it's ordered. The double helix, DNA, there's a code within the cells that's developing.
It's like that communication that Krishna's like hearing what I'm thinking. Even maybe Krishna's putting the thoughts in. So, and if I'm like reciprocating, then yeah, it's
And what could be more interesting than that?
mm,
And that's definitely what Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita as the experience of being always in contact with him through intelligence. Buddhi yoga. Buddhi means intelligence, and it means we're aware that we're being guided at every second.
mm.
Thank you for sharing that, Sherelle.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
JM, let's show a few slides. Now, the reason I had preserved this chain of thoughts for today is something that I heard many years ago, but I kept. It was during a political campaign, and I just happened to hear a clip of somebody talking about how one would be effective in running a campaign. And the person said this. He was a person expert in running political campaigns. So here was a statement. If you rule the airwaves, you come out on top. I pulled my car over and I wrote it down. It was a congressperson's observation, and it lines up with Bhakti because there's a way in which, as I mentioned already, the primary practice is to adjust the sound that we take in every day or at every moment. Depends how much you want to advance. More hearing leads to more familiarity with something, more familiarity, more trust, more likely to choose. Political context. So, what is ruling your airwaves? That's a good question to ask. And it's not that I haven't asked it before, we haven't discussed this, but it's extremely practical because, as we can see, let's go through a couple more slides. There's a way in which you can educate yourself in the context of bhakti yoga or as to the practice of bhakti yoga and take away a principle. Principles are portable. You can take them anywhere you go. That's why they're principles. They work in all circumstances. Here it is. We become what we repeatedly hear. And subtext, your consciousness is shaped by input. What you hear manifests. And finally, you can predict your state of consciousness by your hearing habits. So let me ask a question here. Have you ever noticed, taken note of what your hearing habits are? Or you could say listening habits. What habits do you have when it comes good or bad or equal, good, bad, or neutral? What you don't have to say what your hearing habits are necessarily, but you can just say, are you aware that you have hearing habits? Habits for hearing certain types of things. Next question. If you were to write down all your hearing habits and you were to rate them of what mode of nature they're in, and I'll just preface this by saying, everything's affected by the modes of material nature, except for transcendental sound, and we'll get to that point that Ishan had asked about in a minute. How is transcendental sound even possible? And so there's a way in which you could write down, if there was a way in which you wrote down all of your hearing habits, and then you labeled them, whether they're hearing habits in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance based on our earlier conversation. Would you be able to do something like that? Ishwari Radha is shaking her head, so I'll ask you to tell me why you're shaking your head. Tell us more.
Thank you so much. It starts from the early morning. I hear my spiritual masters talk. I hear just all about just what is life all about? How am I going to just, I don't know how to explain, but I listen to these very advanced spiritualists, and that kind of shapes my day. And I'm constantly just thinking about what I heard in the morning, and then I try to see it throughout my day. And when I hear other sound vibration, it distracts me. It's like, oh, I don't want to hear that at all.
You're very much aware and particular about what you hear, it sounds like. Okay, that's practice of bhakti. In fact, we find in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there's a statement about how a certain class of transcendentalist restricts his or her hearing to specific kinds of sound vibration, and therefore is able to enter into the transcendental consciousness. Does anybody else have you note, if you think about it now, do you think you could make a chart of what you listen to during the day? You don't have to say what you listen to, but you think you could chart it? Nitya said yes. Nitya, can you say why you said yes? Why do you think it seems chartable for you?
I think it's something that we do very often. We are exposed to different listening environments, and if we stop and think ourselves that what I am listening to right now, very deliberately, I think it's very much easier to do.
Deliberate. It's got the word Libra in it. Means there's a scale. Libra's the scales. So you weigh it out in your mind, Nitya, but you say, okay, I'm listening to this. Which way is it going to tip the scales? Is that what you mean by you're deliberate about it?
Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting. In fact, that's the practice of bhakti yoga, is being deliberate about what you listen to. That's the principle. And if you educate yourself about the nature of sound, there are different kinds of sound. Let's see, I was curious about knowing how the transcendental sound is never touched by material modes of nature. Is it because of the meaning associated with the sound or something else? Because we live in an intelligent, personal universe, and there are different sources of sound. when sound comes from a pure source. And by pure, I mean that the person who is speaking the sound has an intention for service without any expectation of remuneration. Service for service, in other words, they're doing it out of love. And when that sound vibration touches us, it has a different effect than if somebody's saying the same thing, but their intention is different. So there is pure sound. It can be covered by the ill intention if somebody's saying the same mantra, but their intention is very different. Sound also carries the consciousness of the person, so it affects the vibration. So it's very subtle, but subtle things grossify over time and they manifest. There's an entire chapter about this in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it describes the question is asked, same question, and I gave the essence of the answer there. JM, there seem to be a few more things on the board, but maybe I should do a few more slides first. I'm in danger of running out of time before the end of the slides. So I'll just present a few more concepts. What am I listening to right now? That's such a good question to ask oneself. Very good question asked. Thank you very much, Nam. Okay, why the ear? The ear is the most important instrument for bhakti. Sound carries knowledge, reaches what is distant and unseen. In fact, sound can come from beyond the closed universe. It can even carry the transcendent. Hearing can make your life perfect. These are all anecdotes from, or excerpts from various spiritual writings. The point is that you can use your ears to elevate your consciousness. Let's go to the next slide. You heard me say anavriti shabda. There it is spelled out phonetically. In the system of phonetical spelling of Sanskrit, we use Romanized letters. Anyway, there's a guide to see how to do that, but the S with a slash over it is pronounced SH, like in shine. And the A with the line over it means that it's long. So anavriti shabdat, which means liberation by sound. And you see the model sitting there, she's holding a string of beads in her right hand. And that means she's chanting japa. Japa is a meditation where you can sit or walk, but you can count. Most use a string of beads. There's an aesthetic sense when you're holding on to them. And you chant a mantra on one bead and then you move to the next. And taking some time to listen to the mantra, let the sound go into your ears, penetrate your cellular system, you'll notice that your bhakti grows. It means sense of gratitude, sense of happiness. Now, disclaimer, any kind of meditation, including japa meditation, is preceded by some benign discomfort because there's a way in which sitting anywhere and focusing the mind, especially in an age of distraction, can seem extremely difficult. So it's important to be diligent, trust the medicine, trust the prescription, and take it. So we're taking the statement of that congressperson and saying, rule the airways of your life, because if you're deliberate and careful about it, you'll notice the difference. Hearing isn't passive. It affects us very deeply from the inside out. And it's the engine of spiritual practice. So your spiritual future follows your hearing. I just want to get a few comments on that. So we still have 15 minutes left, but I just want to see if any of this, well, I'll use a sound analogy, resonates with you, or if you have any questions about it that I haven't answered yet.
Since I've been chanting japa, I've noticed that I listen to people more, like I can hear where they're coming from, what their intention is when I'm able to like listen to my own voice of like the Maha Mantra. So I've become a better listener all round, which is, yeah, really beautiful. I'm grateful for that.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. These are natural ways of developing sensitivities, spiritual sensitivity by hearing transcendental sound. Radha Kripa is taking in sound very deeply. He wears headphones just to hear every single syllable.
Yeah, today morning I got a call from one of very close person. Uh, I even the few words of those appreciation, it just shifted my whole day. It was so beautiful. Everything shifted. I was just actually thinking I was doing some of my work in the office, but if I'm just one word from somebody who really cares, he's a genuine person, and then when he spoke, I just like a whole thing illuminated. So I just thinking about how the sound, when it comes from, really a genuine connection, how it changes our everything out of life. So I was really grateful that. The connection, sound means connection, right? We are connecting through something, and when it comes from the right source, it can change the life. I mean, my 4 hours, I'm still happy. I cannot express it. I'm just hiding it. So just being so happy, just hearing a positive few minutes of
That's
conversation.
very helpful because you obviously it's still overflowing, and I loved your example. One word from the right source can change your mood, your consciousness, your countenance, everything. It's how powerful sound is. Thank you, Radhakripa. Let's hear from Vicky. Hi, Vicky. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I like this phrase, your spiritual future follows your hearing. It reminds me of what you were saying earlier that depending on what we listen to, by cleansing the mirror of the heart, we can have more or be more in touch with our free will. And that determines our future. And as you were asking us to grade the different qualities of sound that we hear on a daily basis, I was thinking that hearing different types of sound in the modes of passion or ignorance can be a good litmus test for how based on how I'm reacting, for how the quality of transcendental sound is affecting my consciousness, and it reveals my level of consciousness. And yeah, I think that was it. There was one more thing, but I forgot. Thank you.
It reminded me of a lyric from a song from the 1980s. And I had written it down a long time ago, but the artist had written, I don't know what you expect staring into the TV set. So whatever practice we have, whatever we're taking in, you can expect a result. And if you're random about it, what do you expect? Kana, please go ahead.
So the sound, I was taking care of a patient. I work with with kids. We put a body cast on a patient with scoliosis. And when she came out of surgery, she was so like upset. So I kind of just hummed to the baby. And as I hum, it would calm the baby. Even the parents couldn't calm the baby. And I was really humming. I was actually chanting, but I was chanting very low. And it's like there's a certain connection. Like as soon as I stop, the baby will cry. So, and everyone in the room's like, I don't know, it's something with your humming, but I was just chanting very low. I'm like, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And it just eased the baby.
Wow.
And I know scientifically, they say the eardrum, I'm not sure the significance. That's where the blood comes, I guess the closest to the surface is through the ears. And the blood travels through the whole body. So it's like, I think it like picks up a vibration and it moves through you.
Wow. You got a lot of love from that one. That was a deeply moving example you gave there. It reminded me of a group of Bhakti practitioners had gone to visit a colleague who was in a coma. And the doctor said, but they asked, can we chant to her? And doctors said, yeah, but she can't hear you. And they started chanting, and then she came to consciousness. So the person who was relaying that story was saying, they say, you can't hear you. It's like, how do you know? It's the conscious Atma, the Atma inside that hears the vibration, and it's palpable. Yes, Gaina.
One more thing, that I had a experience with that. I work in healthcare, so I'm very for like 20 something years. My grandmother actually had a stroke, and she was like in and out of consciousness. But when I chanted to her, she would calm down and just really get on I don't know, it was like a frequency. As soon as I would chant, she was just, even though she never knew about chanting or anything like that, but it would actually calm her. I just know that
Yeah, thanks for
realization.
sharing that. This is very important anecdotal experiences or evidence. And we can do it for ourselves also. There's ways in which we may seek sanctuary in the wrong place. For instance, the mode of passion. There are lots of sound vibrations that just agitate the mind. And when we're in the mode of passion, it seems like a good idea to listen to more passionate things, to lose ourselves, or the mode of ignorance, to just ignore what our consciousness is and how it interacts with the sunrise and with the ocean and everything that we see around us. But bhakti means to be very clear about the science of hearing, to be very deliberate about doing it, and taking it as a medicinal dose until we start to notice ourselves as the patients that we're improving. And nothing succeeds like success. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that we should be able to experience a genuine practice directly. It's not theoretical, it's something you should experience for yourself. That means you should notice that you're improving. So this is the practical means. It's good to have a system that you can do every day, regulate yourself, and do an experiment on yourself. Do a double-blind study and see how you feel by chanting. Avinash, please go ahead.
So a picture speaks 1,000 words. Why sound and not sight?
Why sound, not sight? The sound, sight, any of the senses engaged in transcendence can be extremely important. But as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, sound is creative. And an example that the commentator Prabhupada gives is that to create anything tangible here in this world, we use sound vibration. For instance, if you want to build as he said, a skyscraper building, the first thing you do, you might think of it, but then the next thing you would do to manifest it is start talking about it. I noted that even during I'll finish that as he says, the ingredients are already there, but they come together when you make the sound vibration. And I noticed during the pandemic when people weren't able to go out and do the similar things as they had done before, you meet on Zoom and talk about it. And by the sound vibration, a lot happened, a lot came about. And tracing it back, the Bhagavatam, to the beginning of the manifestation of the physical world, it comes from subtle and then grossifies. And it's mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam that the sound is what brings all the elements together. It's a creative force. So using that same principle, we can manifest whatever we're interested in our lives. And also, Anambriti Shabda, transcendental sound, has the power to uncover our consciousness. Avinash, please go ahead.
I think I got the answer. So I've studied a little bit of neuroscience, and our thoughts are actually, when we think, we vocalize them, but we sub-vocalize them, which means our vocal cords vibrate, but they don't vibrate enough to push sound out. So our thoughts actually produce sound. So maybe that's kind of why I feel like sound is probably the most important sense in this process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali mention this, and so does the Srimad Bhagavatam mention how we have energy centers in our body, and that the thought energy comes from the chakra or energy center, which is around our midsection. And as it rises, it takes on more tangible form. A word used in Scientific American in the 1800s was grossify. It goes from subtle and it gets more tangible as it increases. And by the time it reaches our voice box, that thought we've already seen it in our mind, and now we express it in words. And now it's gone from subtle to gross, and the very vibration itself then gives us opportunity to bring the ingredients necessary to manifest it together. Thank you so much, Avinash. Okay, let's see a couple more slides, because then we can finish what's on the board, JM. Okay, if you like homework, here's a few things to take home. Take this week, starting today or tomorrow, whichever one you like, to rule the airwaves. Rule your airwaves. Remember that it's up to you. And so you can do an audit, as I suggested in the very beginning. What dominates your daily hearing? Do a hearing audit. Increase hearing transcendental sound. Even if you do it a little bit, just like when we change seasons here in California, Northern California is a good place to watch seasons because you don't get smothered by them, but at the same time, you can notice the change. I always notice when spring is coming in, there's even a few minutes extra sunlight in the daytime, or when the sun is up, that the plants immediately respond. They come out of dormancy. So in a similar way, when we increase a little bit at a time, we'll notice that our consciousness comes out of dormancy by the power of transcendental sound. You can also turn down mundane chatter or mundane chatter competing for airtime, I think that says. And that's something I've noticed very helpful, is don't say everything your mind tells you to say. Because oftentimes it just leads to, especially if you're talking to somebody else, if you bring up mundane topic, they may amplify it. So try not to do that. And notice the difference in your consciousness when you don't pass on useless information. If you hold it back, you edit it out, you'll notice a completely different experience, or at least you will notice the difference. And build taste. This is a very high concept. But the more you hear superior transcendental sound vibration, the more you'll get a taste for it. In the beginning, it may taste terrible, just like some kind of medicine tastes terrible. I'd rather hear something in the mode of passion or ignorance. But the more you practice hearing it, the more you get a taste for it. And that means you're getting spiritually healthy. So choose the sound that shapes your future. JM, any more slides, reflections? That brought us to the very end. It went by so fast. It was really nice to be with all of you tonight. I'm obviously in another room. I have a guest staying with me who's living in the space I'm usually in. And I had a nice day with my guests and other people who came to visit here at the house. And I was looking forward to coming and being with all of you for this topic tonight. And I hope there's something that was useful to you that you can take away. I know just talking about it for me is important because it reminds me again and again that I have to take responsibility for the sound vibration in life. I was inspired by what Ishwari Radha said about how she starts off the day immediately by making sure she's connecting to spiritual sound vibration. And we can all do that. Yasmin's giving a heart means she's up for it. Right, Yasmin? Definitely. Let's do something transcendental before we leave, like as a way to say goodbye. And I'm thinking of what Denise is doing. I'm thinking of doing that too. The yogis high in the Himalayas, when they see each other on the peaks of the mountains, collecting some little bit of some roots, tubers, whatever they can find, take back to their cave. They joyfully greet one another or even say goodbye by using this phrase, which literally means keep the transcendental vibration going. It's Hari Bol. You want to try it? Denise already did it, so we'll do it. Hari Bol.
Haribol.
Come on,
Haribol.
everybody. Great to
Haribol.
see you.